hello, and welcome to Unexplained Possibilities Podcast. I'm your host, Melvin the Crimson Taurus, and unfortunately, Rose cannot be with us tonight. She is stuck at work and most likely bored out of her mind, which is the exact opposite for us tonight. If you also follow us on social media, you know that my co-host for tonight was going to be a paranormal experiencer, Benny Manzo. Unfortunately, he had to drop out due to a couple of issues, so I have a replacement. Introducing first is my co-host for tonight, friend, paranormal investigator himself, experiencer, author of the Zozo Phenomenon, music man, the Zod Father. I'm talking about Darren Evans. Darren?
Hey, Melvin. Oh, the Zod Father. That's a new one, man. Hey, I like that. Hey, thanks for having me. It's going to be a cool show. And Melvin, man, thanks for doing what you do, man. You've come a long way since you first started, and I'm happy to be here for you, bro.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. Your third appearance. I appreciate it. Still learning, but we're getting there.
Always learning, man. Always, taking in new experiences. And I look forward to talking to some of your guests tonight, man. It's pretty cool.
And speaking of guests, next we have a fine young lady here, and I'm not making this up. She's probably been to more haunted locations than freaking Scooby-Doo. And she does this intentionally, okay? That says a lot right there. Of course, I am talking about the lovely Miss Niki ParaUnNormal. Hi, Niki.
Hi.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited. It's going to be an awesome show.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. You've been to a lot of places. I'm
getting quite a list. Together, but of course, this scroll of never-ending, list of places that I want to go to is, I add more places every day, I think. So hopefully I'll get to all of them.
I'm sure you will.
I hope so.
Finally, we have two newcomers with us tonight. They've investigated places such as the Madison Seminary, the Kent Stage, and Ohio State Reformatory. From EctoVision Paranormal, EVP for short, which is awesome, that's so clever, we have Eric McGill and Shawn Gilmore. Welcome, guys.
Hi.
Hello.
What's up? Glad to be here tonight. Thanks for having us, Melvin. Hi, Darren. Hi, Niki.
Hi.
How's it going, guys?
Good. How's it going?
Pretty good. Good to have you on, man.
Thanks, man.
So, I'm kind of keeping everyone up because, for the most part, they're East Coast, and it's 10 o'clock there, 7 o'clock here in California, and I really appreciate all you guys, except for you, Darren, because it's still kind of early for you. So you're not in this.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you guys staying up late and coming on and doing this with us. That's really cool.
Not a problem.
No problem at all. I'm excited.
Absolutely. It's an honor to be here.
We're going to start off with a simple yet complex question. And I think I'm going to direct it to Shawn and Eric first. So I hope you don't mind, Nicole.
Oh, not a problem.
All right. So how did you all get interested in the paranormal?
Would you like for me to go first? This is Eric.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, go ahead,
Sure.
Eric.
Well, I have to say, I had experiences when I was younger, like around the age of 5. But at the age of 5, I don't necessarily think that you know what you're looking at or what you're experiencing. You just know it's odd. Later on in life, I had an experience where I had seen and actually heard more or less like an animal type spirit in my room. So at that point, I was a pretty firm believer in the paranormal, and it just sort of piqued my interest, and the interest, just kind of propagated and grew into what it is today. I started this EctoVision Paranormal team, and it's just grown. And yeah, that's pretty much how I got into it.
It's always when we're kids, isn't it?
What's that? I'm sorry?
Oh, I said it's always when we're kids. Usually that's when we see everything, and then it pulls us into that direction of the paranormal.
Yeah. Exactly. And I don't know if it's, there's a lot of cool theories out there related to why that may be. It could be because, children are more receptive. It could be because they're able to hear better and see, a wider bandwidth of light, which would allow them to, see the spirits, whereas adults aren't able to see these strange things. So there's a lot of cool theories out there on that.
Okay, Shawn, what about you?
Oh, wow. Honestly, it started for me when I was a child as well. I grew up in a town called Shaker Heights, Ohio, and my house and my best friend's house were actually built by the same guy. And I was experiencing seeing shadows and things and I didn't really know how to explain what it was. I was, still pretty young, probably about second, third grade when I started to notice it. And then my friend started talking about having the same kind of experiences in his home. So we both went to the library and we started doing research. I remember the first time I saw the photograph of the gray lady and reading about that. Man, I was in, I think, the fourth grade when I found that, and I've been fascinated ever since. And what's weird on top of that, almost every place I've lived in has had some sort of activity, and it's just kept me interested, especially when I was in high school. I moved to a town called Chagrin Falls after that, and where I lived there, there is a shadow man there, and I would see him, and he would lock doors, and it was even scarier than the house that was in Shaker. And that really affected me in ways, and I wasn't able to talk about it with a lot of people, and finally I just found myself on this path. Here I am now in my 30s. I found myself in this path about 5 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. I don't know. I have 3 kids, so time blurs. But I bumped into Eric at an event, actually at the Kent stage, and the rest is all history from there. I guess that's the short version of it, because I could talk about that for. Oh yeah, I can talk about that for a long time. That's for sure.
And Nicole, we actually spoke about this on the show that you were on previously, but go ahead and let's hear it again.
I, too, was another one who had that childhood experience. I was little, living in an old farmhouse, and I saw a woman. And I can tell you that she was not my imaginary friend. I saw her. I would see her quite often. I even asked my mother and my father, who is the lady in the bathroom? They thought I was crazy, and continued to do so until my mother saw the woman, finally. And, of course, I looked at my mom. Even at that age, I was a little bit of a wise butt girl here, and said,
"Oh, you can curse.
What?
We're
Are
adults.
You crazy?"
Don't worry.
Oh, okay, good, thank you, because I was a wise ass. And I said, "Oh, what, are you crazy?" So it was nice that my mom finally saw what I had seen. I know that some people aren't lucky enough to have another person be able to validate their experience for them, which is why I think a lot of us try to, go in and help people, because the phone calls I think we all get are, am I going crazy? And I think that, I know I felt like I was crazy when I was little because my parents told me I was, but, that's what drew me in to the paranormal. So it's been a fun ride.
Darren, this is something I've actually never asked you. We usually always just jump right into the Ouija stuff, but not this time.
Oh.
What, unless you're going to say it was the Ouija stuff that actually got you into the paranormal, but what got you into the paranormal?
It really was the Ouija. I wasn't really into the paranormal until I started having sessions back in the mid-'80s, and it kind of led to an obsession of talking to spirits. I became kind of the guy that if you didn't believe in the spirit world, you could kind let it be known. And sure enough, I'd show up at your house with a board and a chalice and earth, wind, and fire, and we'd have a session. Very, and what was weird, that some of the strangest encounters that I had was in doing that. And I didn't seem to be affected by the skepticism at all. We would just do sessions and weird shit would happen. And that's how my involvement with everything began back in the mid 80s. And I'm probably older than everybody else, but it's been, very strange 30 years that I've been involved in it now. And I did have the privilege of meeting Niki at WouijaCon. Now, Niki, you were at WouijaCon, is that correct?
Oh, yeah. Yep, I was there. Wouldn't miss it
Yep,
for the
and
world.
strangely enough, we didn't have much conversation, but I knew who you were. I followed your career for a long time. You are kind of like Rosemary, my good friend Rosemary Ellen Guiley, co-author of the Zozo Phenomena. She's just extremely busy, and you're not far behind her in how busy you really are. And my question to you is, I know you're kind of a gadget girl, and I'm just really interested to see what you're using nowadays.
Well, what aren't I using? Whatever I can get my hands on. And I actually have been implementing things that other people, I guess, kind of looked at me like I was crazy at first, and now I'm catching them doing it too. I am doing this all on my own dime. So I have to improvise where I can. And I've been using even things such as spy gear on investigations, using the tripwires from Spy Gear, which you can get on Amazon for $40. And, using that and implementing that as paranormal equipment. Of course, I love my REM pods. They're fantastic and fun and light up. I even have ones that play music. You got to have your handy-dandy recorder. And in locations that will allow you to, might I say, I occasionally bring my Ouija board. So.
Now that brings me to you guys at Ecto. What are your thoughts on using a board for investigations? For a long time I was against it, but I found myself using it a couple of times in some recent investigations, kind of going against my track record. But what are your thoughts on that, guys?
Oh, man, I love that question. Thank you, Darren. It's an awesome question. I really firmly believe there's no difference in using a Ouija board than, say, using a digital audio recorder. It's just a communication tool. And, if you're gonna kind of demonize one form of communication, you'd kind of almost have to do all of it. I guess if you're going to say there is one difference, it might be that you're channeling when you're using a Ouija board, possibly. Or, I don't know, I guess it wouldn't be any different than using a Ouija board than if you were to use, say, like a dowsing rods or a pendulum. But, some of the pitfalls and the reason why we haven't used one yet on an investigation, used one yet formally, I'll say it that way, is, there's this psychology term. It's called the ideomotor effect. I don't know. It's ideomotor effect. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. I'm all backwards. I guess it's late. But this right here, it's like it's basically just a term that kind of explains that you can inadvertently move the say the planchet on the board without knowing it. It's like something your body would do and your mind kind of working together, and it would move the planchet to where your mind would maybe, I guess, expect or want it to go. So it's a great tool, in my opinion. I think they're cool as far as what you can get out of them. But, there's a lot of skepticism that comes along with that, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's something Darren actually talks about in his book, the Zozo Phenomenon. So I'm happy you brought that up because
the ideomotor effect.
Yes.
Oh, cool.
The ideomotor effect. Wow, are we really to believe that we're using minor muscle movements to spell out incredible sentences, phrases, communications? Science likes to dismiss, the paranormal as far as the, Ouija communication on this ideomotor effect. But, it's my opinion that it really doesn't explain everything in this information exchange that we have with, whether it be internally with our own subconscious or whether it be, outside of ourselves with the spirit realm. That remains a very controversial topic, guys. And what do you guys think? Are we talking to the spirit world, or do you think we're talking to ourselves?
Darren, if I could, I'm sorry, I should have brought this up sooner, but, early on and when I started out investigating, the Ouija board was a very, very important thing to me. I always wanted to test it, just to kind of put this ideomotor effect kind of thing to rest, just like you were saying. So what I did is I blindfolded myself and I asked questions and I had others witness it. Now, I didn't see what was going on, but according to the people who were watching me, they said that that I was moving the planchette and spelling out words. So, that if that truly did happen, that's wonderful. I mean, that's great. So, with that said, if you're able to do something to kind of eliminate that scientific theory that would block out, real spirit communication, and it's just your body, your mind moving the planchette, then I think that's a good, effective way of doing it.
What about you, Niki? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I have to agree with you. I actually worked in medical research for quite a long time in neurology, and it doesn't explain the slight movements that would be caused by the effect. The slight muscle movements do not explain the type of answers, I guess, or responses that people are obtaining with the Ouija board. I think that I participated in a study, and Darren, I didn't know whether you knew or not. At the WouijaCon, there was a study that was done with the Ouija board, and I didn't know if anyone ever found out the outcome from it, because that was kind of to study this particular topic, and I never heard anything more about it. I
haven't either. It was a Danish researcher,
yeah,
and he was doing eye tracking movements. And the weird thing about that is they had several people that were signed up for this experiment from a Danish, paranormal researcher, scientist type guy. And Zozo showed up, and a lot of the tests, the tests that were run with this eye tracking, I have not had a chance to really follow up with. I forgot his name. I did interview him for a show that we were. Yeah, I remember you were interviewing. We're just a really cool guy. And it was weird that, here's Zozo showing up at WouijaCon for an experiment, and so that was pretty strange. I was lucky enough to interview a team of researchers at the University of British Columbia that were using Ouija boards to probe into the human subconscious. But one particular test proposed yes or no answers to participants using the board on their own, blindfolded. However, they thought they were using it with someone else. And the very strange thing that they were able to get out of those experiments is that the subjects were able to answer questions more correctly using the board than when they were answered the same questions verbally without the board. And so they have no explanation for that. And I thought that was just pretty strange. Now, they don't attribute it to anything paranormal, this team of researchers. However, they aren't able to explain what happened during these experiments. So it remains a controversial subject for sure.
Right now, paranormal investigation shows, ghost hunters, ghost adventures, paranormal witness, etc., etc. They're pretty popular. And the popularity, it's leading to people to believe more in the paranormal supernatural. They're saying, okay, it's possible it exists, but on the other side, you have folks saying it's all theatrics, which some of it probably is. But how do you guys feel about these paranormal investigation TV shows? I know, Darren, you were on Ghost Adventures, so you might have some inside knowledge that others may not. But how do you all feel about them?
Well, I'll tell you, just from my experience, having been on Ghost Adventures, there's an upcoming episode where we filmed in Oklahoma again. I was brought in as kind of a Ouija expert I could tell you working with Zach and them guys was an incredible experience. They showed nothing but respect for me. I didn't know going into these investigations, what was going to happen. And that's one of the thrills, I'm sure everyone can agree, when going into a location, regardless of who you're with, whether it be a television show, whether it just be on your own, you just don't know what to expect. And I've worked with guys at Live Sci-Fi, Tim Wood, one of the most popular paranormal investigative groups on the internet. And so it was an incredible experience for me working, on television, a few different times on Fact or Faked, as well as film. It's just, it's a lot of fun. You don't know what to expect. And I just had nothing but a, good experience all around, with the people that I've worked with. I've been pretty blessed to be able to work with some pretty cool teams.
Go ahead, Shawn.
You know what? They're entertaining. I watch them. Honestly, I wouldn't use them as a learning tool of any sort. The one thing you have to keep in mind is they do have producers, and they do need to keep viewers. So there's certain things that I don't always agree with, like calling a quote-unquote orb a ball of energy or a ball of light. Those types of things kind of make me chuckle a little bit. But I find them very entertaining. Eric produces shows for us, and we're very fortunate because we are able to control everything we put in them. We control all the findings, and we know what we use is 100% real, and we're able to control that. We don't have a producer, telling us what we need to have. Eric is the producer, and he does an awesome job for us. So I guess since we kind of do our thing, my whole attitude towards all of it has changed a little bit. I look at them more as entertainment, just as I would watching The Walking Dead or watching a movie at the movie theater. It's not really a learning tool. You get to see some of the tools being used that we use in the field, but you don't get to see what you really do in the field. You don't see all the research that's done. You don't see all the work that's really put into it. It makes it look very easy and just like a lot of fun and games. And honestly, a lot of them, I feel like they're disrespectful during investigations. And I feel like that kind of gives people the wrong idea about investigating the paranormal as well. But like I said, they're entertaining, and I enjoy watching them.
That's interesting you'd bring up propagation, because I kind of feel the same way about you. I'm more of a respectful type of person. I have gone off a few times, with some of these in a haunted location where I had some really bad time. I kind of got caught up in the moment, but I kind of agree with you. A lot of disrespectful propagation. And Niki, what are your thoughts on the whole propagation issue?
Well, I can say this. I am not for provoking unless something messes with someone on my team. I have also investigated with Live Sci-Fi, and we were at a location, and something was messing with Kristen. Kristen Manning is awesome. She's a psychic artist, and something was messing with her, and I was having no parts of it. And I'm all about being respectful until something affects one of my team members in a negative way. We're working together. It was just us girls along with the boys club here, and something was picking on her. And I'll admit, I was not very respectful. I went off. I called it out and said, if you're going to pick on somebody, pick on me. I don't typically do that, but in that certain circumstance, I did. I don't go into a place acting as if I'm, like I'm the one who lived there. That's for sure. So I'm definitely against it until somebody messes with one of my teammates. And then I'm going to probably open up a can.
Oh, we don't want that.
No, it wasn't pretty. People were shocked. They didn't know what to think.
Shawn, Eric, I looked at all your content on YouTube. I love it. But I have noticed that you try to stay as calm as possible. You're always very, very respectful. And I wanted to know, do you just have that mentality already planned that you're going to go into this place regardless of what happened here, and we're going to stay calm and cool no matter what?
That's a really good question, Melvin.
Excellent question.
I think it's something that's almost subconscious. It's a part of us, so we don't have that in us to go in and be disrespectful. In the back of our minds, I think it's like we don't know what it is or who it is that we might be dealing with when we get to a location. So we go in there with a little bit of maybe a little bit of fear and respect. I don't know. It's something that's in us. We don't have it in us to go in there as kind of like Niki was saying there a moment ago, like we own the place. We know that we're visitors. We're just there to try to communicate and try to, as Shawn would say, bridge that gap of communication and hopefully get some responses.
Definitely. If I can just add a little bit to that. We go into a place, and when we're investigating, like Eric said, we don't know who we're talking to. And really, the most important thing is, people want to believe that they're talking to demons. I personally believe most of the time it's not. And when we're talking to somebody, it could be someone's child, someone's grandfather. That's a person that deserves respect in my mind. So that's kind of what keeps me at that level as well. And our team has such a great chemistry that we don't really have to worry too much about who's going to be respectful or disrespectful. It's just part of who we are.
All right. Now, Darren, you mentioned that you were with, you investigated with Lie Sci-Fi, returned to the Zozo house. You know, everyone should watch that one day. Not now. You're listening to us now. But in the future, you should check it out. And there, you know, that was a weird place, all right? The energy was just very bizarre. And you did some provoking, even though you were asked to, and, you know, it was situational. But how did you feel doing that in there?
Well, it was, you know, I kind of had the same emotions that Niki was talking about when one of these, it's one thing if it's messing with you, and it's entirely different when it's messing with someone you care about. And that's kind of what my mindset was. I mean, this thing attacked, you know, my child. It attacked my loved ones. And so it was kind of a way for me to, in a strange way, to, you know, to kind of get back at this thing. And I kind of went off on it. And, you know, I was during that whole thing. I mean, I may not have showed any fear, but you know, there's always that fear element. And that's, you know, I'm kind of curious to ask other investigators about how fear comes into play when they go into a location. And Nick, I know that you put on a pretty bold face. I mean, I know you're well known to just go anywhere. And so talk a little bit about how fear affects you and your investigation.
I have not had fear when going into any of these situations. I don't know. I did a documentary for some guys who did an experiment type situation in Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. And part of the deal was when they invited me, I have no idea why they picked me. I get this invite and they said that they were going to scare me. They were going to break me, bring me to my knees. And I said, oh, okay, let's do it. You know, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, what are they going to have me do? You know, is this going to be where I'm like sticking my hand in a thing of cockroaches? Like, what's going on? Because that kind of freaks me out a little bit more than the idea of going into a location and investigating. And maybe that's just me. I've never ran out of a place. I've been carried out. I can say that now, thanks House of Wills. But I have not ran out. I will not leave. Evidently, I'll have to be carried out if I'm made to leave, evidently. But I don't have fear. I want to learn. I want to understand. I want to experience. And maybe that makes me nuts. Could be. So I've been called worse. But, you know, I'm not scared. I want to go everywhere, anywhere.
What about you guys, Shawn and Eric? I mean, do you think that these things feed off of fear? Do you think that they may prey on the weakest link, maybe a team member in your investigative team? Do you think that these things feed off of fear?
But that's a really good question, Darren. I think in a lot of residential cases, that very well could be true. And some of these larger, more popular locations, I don't know that they would have a reason to do that, but they probably would have a reason to maybe isolate one of your team members if they show fear, and maybe I guess maybe they could feed off of that in some way. Maybe that's how they get their jollies. I really don't know. But in that case where you had mentioned earlier, Darren, where it upsets you, I think we've all been in that situation before, and it is hard to control your emotions. So I guess that would be the one instance, going back to the earlier question, where you would have trouble trying to remain respectful. But getting back to the topic here, I think it's more common if a family is experiencing activity, if the spirit or entity is causing fear, that would be the case. In my opinion, they would have, a constant source of that energy supply, in my opinion, if there's any truth to that theory.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. Personally, I'm going to cut in because I've worked on residential cases. I've lived in residential cases with people, a family of actually with 9 children, and they have a whole floor of their house they won't use, and they feed it with fear. They all live in the bottom floor all together in a tiny little place in a 20,000 square foot house. Okay, and I believe wholeheartedly that they have fed everything that's going on there with the fear. And I told them, the whole key is to coexist, to work on a relationship of coexisting so they can take back their house. Because they have so much fear. That's exactly
right.
Exactly. I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Very well said.
What I would like to know also is, have you guys ever experienced anything coincidental? And I'm going to give an example of that real quick. Darren, before you went back to the Zozo house, we had a podcast and we were talking, and we were discussing black birds, and out of nowhere you were saying that just a giant flock of black birds just start to fly everywhere over your head when we were talking about that, and you got some of it on film, and the Z entity, we know he has a connection to black birds. So have any of you guys had something of strange coincidence like that occur?
Well, that's a great question, Melvin, and I'm gonna interject real quick before we let some of our other guests answer that. And I learned, again, we were talking about the whole blackbird, corvid, ravenology type thing during the show, and I have found it basically every radio show. Not everyone, but a lot of times when I'm doing a radio show, and I've been on quite a few, that there is this strange synchronicity thing that happens, and that being a perfect example of that. And I remember when I first got into this back in 2008, as far as being in the public eye with this whole paranormal stuff, I remember having a lot of conversations with John Zappas, and he was the first to tell me that in his investigations he does look for that synchronistic correlation, that it often happens, and it happens in very strange ways, not unlike the Carl Jung synchronicity. And so, what about you guys? Do you find that? Do you find those strange coincidences or parallels that happen at strange times before, during, and after your investigations?
I've experienced it. Actually, Eric was there. We were leaving the Randolph County Infirmary in Indiana, and I had rented a car, and I got to the car, about to start loading up the car, and on the back window was a dead baby bird right in the middle of the window.
Wow.
We busted out the sage. Well, I did. I got out my sage. I saged myself, saged the amber, and I saged even Eric. I saged the car inside and out, even the glove box, the trunk, everything. I was not going to take any chances because that was just too coincidental to ignore. We just had a crazy night. We slept in the building, and I had crazy experiences sleeping there. And so it was just nonstop activity while we were there. So to have that happen when I came outside, I was not going to ignore it.
Yeah, I would have peed my pants.
What's funny about it, though, is a family pulled up out of nowhere. They pull up in their car, and so I see this, and I'm trying to, like, be calm. Because there's a mother and her daughter, and their daughter must have been, what, 12? You know, I didn't want to scare anybody, so I was trying to be calm while I was doing this, right? So it was definitely a crazy experience for me.
So I don't know if this is technically what we're referring to here as far as like right before an investigation, but there have been a couple of times where maybe I'd be going to do something related to the paranormal. And actually, Shawn can attest to this because he was talking to me one time when this voice came through on the phone.
Oh.
There's a voice sometimes that I hear, an EVP. I guess we could call it an EVP, but it's a very raspy voice. And I don't know what to associate it with, but it does seem to come every now and then. It's a pretty wicked sounding voice.
Oh, man, when I heard it, I was talking to him on the Bluetooth in my car. I heard it surround sound. Yeah. It was crazy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's the one. And it happens, I don't, it's not like anything I can predict. And it's not like, oh, we're doing an investigation tomorrow, so I can expect the voice at 8 p.m. standard time. No, it's not like that, but it does happen from time to time.
I've had something like that happen in my car after I'd investigated Trans-Allegheny, the Hamilton house, the Monroe house, and Willow's Weep. And I was finally on my way home. And I was on the phone with one of my friends, and I'm talking and driving. I know, naughty girl, but I was doing it, you know. And all of a sudden, it was the strangest. It was a deep sounding, I guess it was a man. I don't know. It was just the strangest thing. And I thought, like, I'm going crazy. Granted, I'm sleep deprived at this point. I've been investigating all these places and going nonstop. And I'm driving home through the mountains of West Virginia. And I hear this. And my phone cut out. And I'm like, oh, man. Am I going nuts? Well, she calls me back and she goes, what the hell was that? She goes, you heard that, right? And I'm like, yeah. And I'll be honest with you. That might have been the only time I've ever had any type of apprehension of looking in my back seat. Because I was like, is that behind me? Like, what in the hell was that? Because it was so loud, and it was coming right from behind me. And I had an experience when Dave Spinks and I had left Hamilton House where I was putting stuff in the car, and I heard a little kid, and I about died. It said, Mama? And I said, oh, hell no. I said, Nah. I said, I got enough. I said, I've got enough kids. I don't need another one. I said, you stay your ass here.
Right?
And we walked back to go into the building. And I kid you, I turned around and looked at him first. And I said, did you hear that? And he goes, yeah. And I won't say what it said. I swear, if we had paper, I'd make us both write down what it said and hold it up just so we could. Because, there's so many times when somebody's like, yeah, I heard that. So I'm like, what did you hear? And he goes, Mama. And I went, And we were like, okay, calm down, walk back to the house. Because I'm like, nah, I'm not bringing any more kids home. I've got enough. I'm good. And as we walked up to grab the door, and we were the only ones there, this guy left us with his, his house, which had his business in it, everything he owned. We go to touch the doorknob, and the deadbolt turned right in front of us. And we couldn't get in.
Oh, yeah.
We were locked out. And he looked at me, I looked at him, and we're looking through, you could see through the top of the door, the glass, and we're both looking to see because we knew no one was in there, but we're like, what the, and he's like, my toothbrush is in there. And he was freaking out because his toothbrush was inside. We had to go back the next day to get the stuff, and we had to explain to the owner that we got locked out of this, his house because, something locked us out. Thank goodness we were done for the night, and we only had a toothbrush inside at this point, but still, it was the craziest thing. After all the experiences I had on this amazing trip, and I've got this thing in the back seat, evidently bringing it home with me, and I'm like, huh? Oh, no, this isn't good.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is that a fear of yours, just bringing somebody home with you or something home with you?
I already have stuff here. I've got stuff here. I don't know if anything mingles, if I bring it back, if it would mingle or want to stay. But I know that I have things here going on, some strange stuff. I should investigate my own house if I could get my family to leave. But you know, I guess I have invited things to leave a family and to come home with me because they were living in fear. And I probably shouldn't have done so. But I have strict rules in my house. Nothing can mess with my kids or my dog. So they can mess with me, but nothing else.
I have the same rules.
Shawn, Eric, have you guys had something follow you home that you did not want there?
I have.
You know, I kind of just attribute most of what goes on in my house to something that's already here. And as I think, I don't know if Niki brought this up on the air or off the air, but you have that that whole thing called spirit sickness or spirit hangover, as she called it.
Yep.
You know, that can tend to happen a few days after an investigation, and I don't like to blame that on a spirit so much as your body maybe cleansing itself. So I don't know that there's any. I don't know if I can really say that anything's really followed me home.
Darren, this could be a loaded question for you, but well, what about
You know that, yeah, that's you know, I've been asked that a lot, you know, and I think that you know, I got asked to leave a prominent group here in Oklahoma, one of the biggest paranormal groups in the state of Oklahoma. Actually had a meeting after I'd been with them on. They called me in on like 3 investigations, and in each investigation there was EVPs caught of something pronouncing its name, and I think we know who that name is. And so I was asked to leave the group, and they were pretty upset that they, you know, had to ask me that, but I wasn't upset at all. I was like, okay, you know, I understand why, because of the evidence that was captured. They didn't want me contaminating a client's house more than it already is. And so I think that takes place. I really do. I think that certain people are spirit magnets. I think the mere presence of someone, I'm not saying that I have an attachment, of course, but I'm not saying that I don't. And so every time I use a board, it's there. And so it makes me wonder how prevalent is this during investigations? People that have been like Niki, been all over the place, been in dozens and dozens of haunted locations. Do you bring something to the table that other people don't? And so it's not very talked about, but I think it happens. And it's cool that we can sit down and talk about some of these issues that not a lot of people talk about. You know, and I wonder myself, I'm more of a researcher, but I have gotten in more to the investigative side of things, having worked with, you know, quite a few people in the field. I've learned a lot. And so I don't know. It's a really tricky question, but it makes me wonder myself, Melvin.
That leads me to this question. If demons exist, well, actually, before I ask it, do we have a consensus that demons do exist? Like, does everyone believe that or no?
I like to preach the gospel of I don't know on that one. It's really a hard question. Is in the form that they torment people. I don't know that. In the form of The Exorcist, where you're spewing green vial, I don't know. I've never witnessed that. I'm sorry.
I think there's a lot more demons on TV, I think, than are portrayed on TV than we run into in the field. So it seems. I think that everyone on TV is, you know, chasing a demon. I think in the general household, I think a lot of times what people perceive as a demon is sometimes just a grumpy spirit. I'm pretty sure that I'll probably be grumpy because I have my days where I'm really grumpy too. I think that not a lot changes. Personality-wise, I think that if you are a crotchety old lady, you're going to be a crotchety old spirit, and so on and so on. So, you know, I think that there are some people who are truly affected, whether that be by something that's just negative versus something that's demonic. I don't have a you know, like a thermometer or a little sticker I can put on them or a turkey thing that pops out that tells me this is definitely a demon. Evidently, they only issue those to people on TV, but you know, there's things out there that are dark, I don't know. That's why we all, I think, are doing this. We don't know. We want answers. We may never have, but it'll keep us busy in the meantime.
I have to agree with Niki wholeheartedly on that. I think that most people in their homes, it could be a spirit that's even afraid or angry for whatever reasons. Who knows? But most of the time, I do believe that it's not something that's demonic. Now, I have experienced very negative things, though. Whether if I can call it demonic, I'm not 100% sure because I couldn't see it. I feel energies. I am an empath, but I don't see things. So I can't tell you. I'm right there with Eric. Whether if you call it demonic or is it an angry spirit, there's definitely negativity out there, and it definitely greatly affects people. And the whole unknown factor is really what we all need to be careful of in this field.
Now, because it's such a large unknown factor, is that what actually drives all of you to the unknown? It's like, well, no one else knows about it. Let's see if I can figure out, because you kind of get a rush from it.
It's adrenaline for sure. I mean, I don't think that I'm going to go out and get all the answers. I'm quite certain. I have more questions every day. I don't even have to go on an investigation to have more questions. I think every single day, being involved in the paranormal, having people reach out to you, we all seem to have a lot of questions. And there are no experts when it comes to the unknown. I think we're all learning. We all have different techniques and methodologies. And, like I said, it keeps us busy. But I don't think I'm going to fix it, solve it, or figure it all out. But if I do just a little bit for myself, then I'm okay.
All right, that works for me. Darren, Eric, Shawn?
I agree with Niki. We're not going to find any answers. For me, it's more about helping that other person feel more comfortable with their experiences. I know what it's like to be growing up in a place and be afraid to sleep in your bedroom. I know those feelings. I know how it is to dread going home because you don't know what's going to happen. And if I can help people feel better in their own homes, then you know what? I've done my job.
I think with the whole demon thing, I do think that there are more demons on television than there are, in the real world. And when just by saying the word demon itself, it does draw parallels to religion. Okay. And so regardless of what kind of label we're going to put on these nasty spirits or tulpas, thought forms, poltergeists, ghosts, whatever label you put on them it's exactly what it is, because we're dealing with the unknown. And for us to put a label on that, again, can draw parallels to belief. And I think if you take enough people that believe in something, no matter what it is, it does give that an energy, similar to an egregore, similar to what we're kind of going through with this whole Zozo phenomenon right now. When 10 years ago, when I brought forth some research and my personal experiences with it, I had no clue that it would result and grow and evolve into what it is now. And I think we're beginning to see more of this, and not only in the Zozo phenomenon, but with Slender Man, the Mothman prophecies, these types of things. They gather an energy, they gather steam from belief. And so I think belief comes into question. And I think when you say the word demon, a lot of religious zealots want to come, blame everything on the demonic, but I do think that there is proof of the demonic realm as well. And so it's, while we don't know, I kind of lean towards the possibility of there being a demonic realm based on the belief and based on the human being aspect.
So what you're saying is that there basically can be demons or demonic forces out there just based on a large group of people believing in that demonic force.
I do think that that's a strong possibility. I do. Look what's going on with the Zozo phenomenon. There's so many people experiencing it now, whereas, before I started the research on this, it was a lot of, and I think the internet has a lot to do with these types of phenomenons as well. Mm-hmm. But there's been a lot of people come forward because of the internet that are sharing more of their experiences, whereas before the internet, you had word of mouth, and I think that it's just promulgated a lot of these paranormal experiences. People are able to come forth with a much greater methodology with the advent of the internet. I think it has it's had a dramatic effect on the paranormal investigators and experiencers both.
Well, and I think TV too, as we had talked about, I think in the beginning, the TV shows are a great form of entertainment, but also I think they've allowed paranormal to become more mainstream, which makes people more comfortable admitting to their experiences, saying, hey, I had something happen. Before, a long time ago, people, this was hush hush. If you had something strange going on in your house, it's not something that they talked around a water cooler about. A lot of people didn't have the, I guess, even the mindset to tell anyone what they were dealing with. And yet alone, now you can turn on certain TV channels. I think it's 24/7 paranormal. It's become more comfortable to talk about. And then you have the internet where people can go to as a resource to look things up, to go into something with a paranormal word on it and talk about their experiences and open up about it. And I think that it has given people a platform to be able to be more open about all of their experiences.
With that mindset, too, of being able to, how do you say, well, how you look at things from a different perspective, so to speak, has any of you found times, and Eric, Shawn, I definitely know you guys have, but have you ever found times where the evidence you thought you captured was just baloney, such as a footprint that may have been slightly wet?
Yeah, that does happen.
I think that we all have that happen. I mean, I think that you have to be your own biggest skeptic in your own evidence. I think that, as you get more time in and more experience, more review, you start to notice those things like the water heater making a noise that one time you might have thought was a demonic entity. I think we all have that piece where we could go back and go, what in the hell was I thinking? That was totally this. And that's where we have to be open-minded enough and, I guess, critical enough and, be able to go back and say, hey, I was wrong.
Oh, definitely. There is one location that when we go and we do an investigation, I guess I need to explain this first. We set up multiple static cameras. So they're cameras that we leave on tripods and they're just left recording. And on one camera in the basement of the building, I thought I captured this phenomenal scream. This blood-curdling scream from a woman. It was the coolest thing ever. I was sending it to Eric, and I thought it was so cool. And then I went and I was trying to figure out a way to debunk it. And I reviewed one of the cameras upstairs, actually, in a different hallway, and ended up being a door squeaking.
But see, that's exactly what I'm talking about. I do the same thing. Isn't review fun when you do that? You have all these cameras and all these recorders everywhere. And I know I'm a one-person type of person. Like, when I go with people, a lot of times I'm the only one with all the equipment. And then I'm stuck with all these recorders and all these cameras and all this footage to review. And there's times when I'll find something and I'll send it to someone else who's not at all involved, never been to the place, and say, I'll clip it and I'll say, listen to this. What do you think of this? Because I'm more than happy to be told I'm wrong. In fact, I'm looking for that, really. Then you go through a later one of your other cameras and you find that and you go, damn.
Right.
It's kind of like a buzzkill. But, that's the point of having more than just the one camera or the one recorder in the room you're in. And you're like, oh, my gosh, it's an entity screaming or, it's a demon growling.
A lot of the investigation, it's reviewing evidence and listening to the slightest little crack and trying to debunk it, and more listening and understanding, and this goes back to what we were saying at the beginning. A lot of the paranormal television shows, due to editing and, time constraints, they don't show the full investigations. They don't show the aftermath, and they don't show the guys walking around for hours and hours on end, So you guys who are listening, who's interested in this stuff, it's very time consuming. You have to have a lot of patience. Your mind plays a very large effect in it too. Because if you go in, and this is just purely my opinion on this part, but I believe that if you go in with a closed mind and just like, nothing's here, no, it's nothing, this and that, you try to debunk everything without questioning one thing. You have to question something at least once. But if you go in with that closed mind, then you're only going to see what you want to see and not what you should be seeing. And you're going to miss out. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, you can't just say, oh, it's a ghost. Hey, there's a ghost. Oh, demon. Oh! You can't do that either. So you do have to find that balance. Is that any good to the actual investigators?
Definitely. I think so. I mean, obviously, as you see it on TV, it looks like a nice 42-minute or 22-minute investigation. And in all honesty, when you go on a real investigation, I don't know how many people, because I do group investigations, it's their first time, they've seen it on TV, and about 22 minutes in, they think it should be over. And this was boring. Why didn't something happen? It's this unrealistic, situation that they think that they're going to have, we have no contracts with these places. We don't sign contracts with the entities, so they can't sign that they're going to give us an apparition and EVPs, 2 knocks and a door slam. There's no guarantee. So when you're standing there and you've got these people who've never been before, and they're kind of getting fidgety, and I start to kind of chuckle because I'm like, oh, you just wait. If you actually had to take the cameras home like I do, you would really understand. It's not as fun as it is on TV, and definitely if you go in with the mindset that nothing's going to happen, you might have that happen. I mean, you need to be as open-minded as possible, but still being skeptical, because you don't want to jump and run and go, oh my gosh, it's a ghost, or demons are after me. You just have to go in and say, oh, that's something I'll take and, notate the time on to go back and further review. So, yeah.
I agree with you, Melvin, to an extent, especially when it comes to the debunk process. But in a residual haunt type case, chances are if there's going to be something happen, it doesn't matter if you believe it or not, it'll happen. But when in the skeptic's mind, there's always an explanation for the activity that you capture. So if a door slams, then somebody was down at the end of the hall and they slammed the door off camera. So it's kind of a lose-lose situation in that scenario. But if you go into a place and you're bored out of your mind, you don't want to be there, you're not really actively trying to gain communication, chances are you're probably not going to get it.
Okay, so when the live sci-fi Zozo was going down, they had a 72-hour live feed. And for a good portion of that, I was glued to it. I mean, Darren, I was bugging you to death. Like, oh, hey, Darren, man, there's movement there. But I honestly thought you were going to say, shut up! But it gave me a small taste on what it's like to investigate. But that's not what I'm going to get at here. What I'm going to get at is 2 things that just freaked me out that I saw happening, and it involves possession. One was, what's her name? Nicole Noel. Very similar name to yours, Niki.
I know, it's weird.
Yeah, one involves Nicole Noel, and the other involves Tim. But Tim's pretty hardcore, so, I mean, this guy, I have all the respect in the world for him, but he's a nut. But, anyway, it seemed like something came over her. Like, she did not seem like herself, and it's something I will never forget. It really freaked me out seeing that, and I was 100% concerned. From what I could tell, she has a laid back personality, and not a very scared person, so to speak, and it looked like she just turned into a little shy mouse and like, okay, yep, but just try not to be seen. And it was just concerning. Have you guys on your investigations, Niki, I know we spoke about that. I don't think we were recording when we did, but we spoke about it. Have you guys on any of your investigations, have you encountered someone that was possessed, partially possessed, or some other entity had an influence on them?
Is this
Yes.
question for us?
Oh, yeah, I should have, yeah, sorry. Yeah, Shawn, Eric.
I'll say this. We've met people who thought they were possessed, but I think that they had other problems. I'll say it that way.
That's a good way of putting it. That's very nice of you.
Yeah, that's a short version where nobody is embarrassed.
Well, I don't know if I would call it possession, but I have seen times when a team member has been affected, like their mood has been affected. Someone who's not normally grumpy actually ends up being grumpy or in a bad mood. I've seen that happen a couple of times, but I have not seen anything that would be considered like a full-on possession.
Okay. Darren, now towards the end of the Zozo return to the Zozo house, you did, I don't know what Tim calls it, but you guys were on the Ouija board, and it was like your sensory, it was blocked off.
Sensory deprivation.
Yeah, thank you. And dude, you turned into someone else for a second. Do you recall that?
I do, but it's hard to explain. I've never done the Gonsfield. I've always seen Tim kind of do it. He's had some strange moments, in that sensory deprivation, and I did a little research going into. I thought I might actually, try it, and I did. And for me, it was like almost like being in a dream type environment. I felt like I was underwater, like I was kind of swimming in a dream. But I was pretty aware of what was going on, but I was like really getting into the whole dream lucidity aspect of that. And so I didn't know what to expect, but I'm very open-minded, and I kind of just went with the flow. I didn't really feel like I was becoming possessed. I have had those, there has been a couple of times in my life where I feel like I was definitely under, an influence of a spirit. Because of my behavior, and even though I was able to recognize that behavior as not really being myself, there wasn't much I could do about it at the time. I went through severe panic episodes that landed me in the hospital because of my experiences, and so I think everybody has their own individual experience. But I have, during that Z House investigation, Niki she did change, and she was affected by it. I was asked behind the scenes to contact Everett Cox, the Oklahoma exorcist, and I called him at 2:30 a.m. because we were concerned, and he, bless his heart, he's an elderly gentleman and didn't feel like going back to the demon house in the middle of the night. He lived in Edmond, of course. It would have been quite a drive, but I can tell you that I was asked to make that phone call, and he gave me some specific things to try to do, which seemed to help, and so. It's just, it's very bizarre how some people are indeed affected by these investigations.
That freaked me out. And I'm not the type who gets freaked out despite what I say. I joke around, of course, but I don't get freaked out that easily. But it was something off there.
And I can tell you from, experience, just working on a show, say, such as Ghost Adventures, that's isn't scripted. And both the times, the 3 times that I've worked with Bagans and the guys, and nothing was scripted at all. And I know a lot of people think that that's the case, that there are scripting going on. But no, it's more of an editing process that they do. But working on live sci-fi, when you go into a 72-hour investigation where you've been up too long, you've got sleep deprivation, you understand that there is somewhat of an entertainment value with this whole investigation thing. And, I didn't really take it as seriously as maybe I should have, knowing that you're going to be, on a YouTube live or whatever. And I think that I've had some weird experiences by myself, and that's why I wanted to go in there by myself, and not so much with all the cameras on me, but, you get that solace of really trying to listen. Things are, you're not distracted by another human being. It's just you and the elements and the environment. And so everybody has their own techniques, but I find it interesting asking these other investigators what are their more favorite techniques, especially when it comes to EVPs. Do you guys have an EVP session, or do you like to use a lot of white noise, or feel free to describe how you go into your EVP sessions.
First, I think I need to apologize. Maybe I misunderstood the initial questions. I thought that we were talking about possession. It sounds like we were talking more about being affected in a location. I certainly have witnessed that before, but as far as a person being possessed, I have not seen that.
I think
it jumped around a little bit, so don't worry. You're on the ball.
I didn't want to definitely insult anyone.
Oh,
no. Obviously, we've all been affected.
Yeah.
Yes, that's something that I think does happen, but I've never witnessed a real possession, or that I would definitely bet my life on. I should say that way.
Yeah, and the whole possession thing, I think that, I think the possession is overused, and it's very rare for someone to become 100% possessed as opposed to a state of oppression. Would you not agree?
I agree.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly how I
Totally.
would word it, too. Yeah, absolutely. And your question was regarding EVP sessions, Darren?
Yeah, I was just kind of curious how that being one of the most fundamental things, and having worked with quite a few investigators who kind of have their different mannerisms and methodologies to EVP work, I'm really curious as an investigator how you guys approach that whole EVP thing.
Oh, well, that's a great question, Darren. We use RT EVP recorders, which allow us to hear direct responses in real time. And one of the benefits of that is that we can immediately call out that voice that we hear and ask everybody who's present if they had made a sound or if they had heard that same sound as well. It's a great debunking tool that you can do right on location. And it also kind of adds validity to that, when you're there and you capture it on camera. So that's kind of our approach. We don't necessarily use a lot of other ITC devices like PSB 7 and 11s. Not that we have anything against them. I think the theory behind them is phenomenal, being that spirits would obviously in the theory where you capture an EVP and you don't hear it with your own ears, it would make it electromagnetic in nature. Therefore, the logical step would be to try to record it onto one of those PSB 7s or PSB 11s or any type of spirit box. It just makes sense that it would naturally go onto one of those devices. It's just really hard to kind of decipher between what the radio interference is and what the actual spirit voice would be, in my opinion. So we have used them before, but we tend to shy away from them just because they're really hard to tell what's the real spirit voice and what might be the radio interference coming through.
Right, and also to kind of add on to what Eric was talking about with our EVPs and how we capture EVPs, the static cameras that we use, we do not use a DVR system. And the reason why we do that is because we are recording sound live with those cameras, and we review them all later on. Actually, that's Tom. We're very blessed to have Tom, and he reviews everything afterwards. So we get very lucky, very fortunate with those static cameras and capturing a lot of EVPs that way.
I need a Tom.
All right.
I was gonna say, wow.
He'd like you, Nikki. He would
I
really
need
like
a
you.
Tom, let me tell you, because it's like I'm a lot of times the only one. I'll go with a few people, There's a few certain people who I investigate with quite frequently, and I have to say, I end up doing the review and the equipment setup, and it gets kind of old. But I wouldn't have it any other way because I kind of enjoy the setup, I'll admit, when I'm given the proper time. But with EVP, I used to use the RT EVP. I'll admit I just got rid of mine, actually, because I was having problems with the download with the newer computers. It drove me nuts, but I did enjoy my RT EVP, and I do see the benefit therein. I use a lot of ITC devices. I actually have incorporated trying to use different types of sound as white noise. I've used white noise as a background sound. I've used a fan and reverse fan, which I've gotten some interesting results. I do love my spirit boxes, although I call them headache makers. I will try anything. And, just because I try it once and it might not be for me, I don't think that necessarily will be the case at the next location. I think that each location, for some reason, I found when I've returned to some certain places that it seems like things are easier to communicate using a certain device rather than another device. But I'm pretty much open to anything. I'll try anything. I don't only use the Panasonic recorder. I have one, the long sought after, way overpriced Panasonic recorder. But I actually will implement the use of all different kinds of recorders. I love my Tascam recorder. I'll use the Olympus, Sony's, you name it. I have them all. And
Niki, I've got a question about your Panasonic. Tim has one. He has actually got one that I believe used to belong to the Constantinos.
Yes.
Who are very famous for their incredible, EVP work. My question for you on that Panasonic, is it the DR6, whichever one that you're talking about that's going for like $1,700 on eBay now? I saw a guy found one for $20 at a garage sale, so that was a big post of his.
I saw that the other day too.
Yeah, and so my question, having used that particular EVP recorder, and I've heard, I've kind of done a little research, but in your experience, were you able to capture mostly grunt type noises on that piece of equipment?
I believe wholeheartedly that's why I refuse to only use that one. I believe that a lot of times, I've even gone as far as to try to eliminate the human effect, if you will. I am that dork who runs around with selfie sticks that are, I literally put it to a selfie stick. I attached it to a selfie stick, so I am not at all touching that microphone to see if I get those same type of sounds come through. And with that particular recorder, it seems to be a lot of what sounds like a dark growl, grunt type of response that is not something that I get when I run my Tascam on the other side of it. I will run. I run around with my Mel meter attached to a selfie stick. I swear, I look like a weirdo, but I don't care because I'm trying to get the best, evidence that I am not personally contaminating. And as much as I love group investigations, I love the people who I investigate with. Sometimes I'd like to, lock them outside because I'm a firm believer that a lot of times people cause contamination. Let's face it. I'm picky. I want everybody to stand still. Don't fidget. Don't move. If you do, you better call it out. No whispering. Because I think a lot of times some of the findings are either the type of recorder that people are using or it's some sort of movement that people are making that they're misinterpreting for, a finding.
Melvin, I know you wanted to get you said something earlier about getting to the part of the program where you're wanting to give advice. And I think you guys kind of get a kick out of or understand this bit of advice. I'm commonly asked, if I could give a bit of advice to an up-and-coming investigator, what might that advice be? Mine was, through experience, don't eat jalapenos an hour before an investigation.
That's wonderful advice.
But Shawn and Eric, what about you guys? I mean, how important is chemistry during your investigation? I know Niki works with a lot of different people. I've worked with a lot of different people, not so much, just that repetitive chemistry. And how important is chemistry to you guys during your investigations?
Darren, it's very important. I think it's one of the most important things about the investigation is going in there, being on the same page with everybody who you're with, and getting along with everybody and just knowing that you're on the same side. I really think that's very crucial to your success. Are we getting to the advice part now, or is this just the first part of the question?
Yeah, give us some advice, guys. Come on, Melvin, is that cool?
My advice,
Yeah.
my advice is short and sweet. Basically, when you're on an investigation, people say that you should trust your feelings. I don't agree with that. I think that when you're on an investigation, you should be aware of your feelings and try to understand them, but don't always trust them because they may not necessarily be yours. That's just a short, sweet little bit of advice I give to people.
Interesting. That's cool. Melvin, what about you, man? What advice might you have to someone getting involved in paranormal radio and this whole paranormal thing? We want to know from you.
Oh, you're not supposed to turn this on me.
Fun.
In all seriousness, one of the best things you can have is an open mind. And even though I joke about, not really wanting to go out in the field or anything like that, it's best not to think that way, because the only way to truly understand something is to experience it. So you have to have an open mind, be willing and patient with any and everyone you speak to, and learn from them. That's the other big thing. You have to listen to people who has done the work before you and learn from that, and then create your own opinions and put your theories into it and see what happens. And in regards to doing the podcast radio stuff, it's going to be a hustle because I'm operating on a budget of $0. And, you're going to have to find a lot of workarounds. So you have to be clever in that regard. And don't be afraid to reach out to people. Worst thing they could say is no. Like, I don't want to be on your show. That's it. Not the end of the world. So, you have to have that courage to reach out. If someone says no, don't worry about it. Like, many people have said no to me. And don't be afraid to be random. Darren and Nicole, I literally just randomly messaged them. Same with Shawn and Eric. I just sent them an email, was it last week? Be open-minded. Don't be afraid of hearing no. And be prepared to learn and just have a lot of patience.
Well, for someone that's not been in the field very long, Mel, I think that's great advice, having an open mind. I think that ties into our friends at Ecto with what he was saying, and Niki, we're going to save you. What kind of advice do you have across the board to someone, wanting to get into the paranormal or who may be, like ourselves, already been involved in the paranormal? What kind of advice would you have?
Oh, buckle your seatbelts. I guess, honestly, I think personally that the living are much more scary than the dead, for me at least. Be prepared to deal with the scrutiny. If you put it out there, don't be afraid or be bothered when someone calls it bullshit. I think we've all had, something that we, put out there, and someone has said, oh, that's bullshit. And you know what? They're allowed to. Not everyone's going to believe what you believe. If you were there, you had the experience, you know what you're talking about. Just to, again, be open-minded. And, don't ever think you know everything, because that will bite you in the ass.
I think that's very true. I think that's some solid answers all the way around, Melvin. What do you think?
I quite like it. That is a good place to end it. Shawn, Eric, where can we find you guys or get in contact with you on social media? And
Shawn, you're pretty good at that.
Yeah, you can find us almost at a lot of the major outlets, definitely Facebook, definitely YouTube. You can find us at youtube.com/EctoVision Paranormal. Very easy, all one word. And again, EctoVision Paranormal on Facebook, and we're also on Twitter, which honestly, Twitter kind of gets left out, but we're also on Pinterest and Instagram. if you like those types of things too. We like Eric and I like to make memes and pictures, and we post a lot of that stuff up on Pinterest. So yeah, we're pretty much everywhere. We have a website also. It's evparanormal.com. You can find out about us and each of our members. We all have a bio there, and we have links to our YouTube videos there as well. Eric, am I forgetting anything?
Yeah, LinkedIn.
Oh, yes.
I'm glad I
LinkedIn.
could contribute.
Yes. Yes, LinkedIn. That's another big one. Sorry.
All right, Nicole, same question.
Because Niki ParaUnNormal will not fit on Twitter, I'm on Twitter at Niki ParaNormal. You can find all the links to my social media on my website, Niki ParaUnNormal, just as it sounds with 2 N's, real confusing. NikiParaUnNormal.com, and you can always catch me over at Live Paranormal for my radio show, Live Paranormal Spotlight Radio, which is on Tuesdays at 10:30. And I got all those same social media things they do too.
All right, and Darren?
Oh, Melvin, hey, first of all, just thanks for getting us all together. It's been a really cool show, a little different atmosphere going on. I really enjoyed it. Want to thank your guests. Thank you for kind of bringing me aboard as a co-host. It's been cool networking with you, Melvin. It's always nice to have conversation with some cool guests. So thanks all the guys for showing up, and Niki too. As far as we've got some surprises coming up as far as what I'm doing in 2017. You look for Ghost Adventures, look for maybe some more live sci-fi and some other surprises. So you can Darren Evans Paranormal on Google will bring you to a lot of stuff. And just Melvin, thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Thank you guys
Awesome.
for agreeing to come on and everything.
Thank you
Been
for
awesome.
having us. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Thank you, everybody. This was a real honor.
All right, don't forget to subscribe to Unexplained Possibilities, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. All those links, as well as the links to reach our guests, will be in the description below. Big thanks to everyone who was tuning in live, our guests, Shawn, Eric, Nicole, Darren. Seriously, thank you guys so much. And with that said, don't forget, guys, there are things that go bump in the night. Remember to tell them hi.